During the Angkor Empire of the 12th century, the first two focal universities were set up in the temples of Presh Khan and Tapram, in order to cultivate well-educated human capital and professional ethics, as were other Southeast Asian nations, under the administration of Andhra Devi. The post-independence growth of higher education was seen in the following three main phases: Sihanouk's 1953 to 1970, Lon Nol's 1970 to 1975, and Khmer Rouge 1975 to 1979. Prior to the Khmer Rouge region, there were just 87 survivors out of 1,009 instructors in higher education. France sought to translate the country's conventional educational structure into a new or Western one during its protectorate and colonization of Cambodia. Moreover, many public schools and colleges across the nation have been established. During the post-colonial era, Prince Sihanouk prioritized tertiary education and created a host department throughout the nation. A poor but developing economy, Cambodia endeavored to shape a post-independence contemporary state was momentary and fraught. There were few higher education institutions (HEIs) before 1953, and since then it has been relatively peaceful and stable. 7 years after the independence from France, during the 1960s, the country first established its modern university in the capital city of Phnom Penh in 1960, which was recognized as a university in the sense of Western, and thereafter a speedy phase of expansion followed. 6 HEIs were established in 1965. Cambodia later began literally erecting from scratch during the 1960s with high numbers of 8 HEIs and 17 years advancement before the war began, and genocides brought about a total zero abolition by the Democratic Kampuchea (DK) Angkor Khmer Rouge regime 1975–79. When the DK was destroyed, higher education sector revived, with aids from the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, until the new government, that is, the People of Kampuchea 1979–1989, had been created, with the underpinning from the former Soviet bloc after 1980. Cambodia elementary education made some progress, however, higher education made a little gain from this endeavor, and United Nations restriction on Cambodian aids from 1979 to 1989 stopped several other countries from assisting Cambodia directly. Hence, the current system of higher education in Cambodia is a legacy of the 1975–1979 genocide preceded by a long civil war, competing, rival political philosophies, social strife, and uncoordinated economic reforms, and foreign occupation and embargo from between 1970 and 1991. Over the last 40 years, higher education in Cambodia has been transformed substantially, specifically after the political deadlock in Cambodia in the premature 1990s was solved. Since the 1990s, in terms of revitalization, construction, and reform, the royal government and people have made some attempts to improve the education system, but one of the main challenges during the early 1990s was the lack of financial resources and skilled human capital in all fields, the legacies of several years of raging civil wars. Although Cambodia attempted to rebuild the education system, it did not prioritize higher education during the 1980s and early 1990s. From 1993, Cambodia began to rebuild itself after massive destruction with the injection of huge foreign aids and its first general election in post-war times, and became a capitalist quasi-democracy, with significant, yet questionable, economic development and social growth. Higher education has been seen as the gateway to the progression of human capital in the economy since Cambodia launched a free market economy in the premature 1990s. Much more troublesome, within the 1990s, the system of public higher education in Cambodia already followed the centralization, elitist and competitive French education paradigm that permitted just a small amount of university students. Cambodian higher education development is comparatively recent and even unequal in comparison with other nations within Southeast Asia. Prior to the late 1990s, the state offered mostly higher education, but very little access. On July 5–6, 1997, the two main military forces of the ruling parties went through a bloody artillery coup, which sadly led to the unity government collapsing had postponed any serious reform intention. Political instability and civil war hampered the advancement of Cambodian higher education during this time period, posing. There were 8 public HEIs in 1997. A number of higher education institutions and degree programs dramatically jumped from 51 in 2005 to 62 in 2007, causing both pride and concern, as if the higher education subsector is enjoying progress, when, in reality, it is undergoing a quiet revolution that requires further attention because of rapid growth in the number of HEIs, which might lead to a drop in education quality. The number of public HEIs increased to 34 in 2014. Higher education institutions located in 20 provinces and the capital city of Phnom Penh jumped from 110 in 2014 to 125 in 2018, of which 48 were public and 77 were private. The number of education staff in higher education rose 42%, from 11,362 to 16,167, and lecturers increased 40% from 8,953 to 12,539. In 2018 there were 11,788 lecturers, of which 1,947 holds bachelor's degrees, equal to 15.5%, 8,751 with master's degrees, equal to 69.8%, and 1,090 with PhDs, equal to 8.7%.